Hello, friends. I'm Kathy Fay, Executive Director of the Boston Early Music Festival, or BEMF, and I'm so pleased to welcome you to this second pre-opera talk. Our first pre-opera talk took place just a few days ago with Robert Mealy, our BEMF Orchestra Director, and Thomas Forrest Kelly, Monteverdi scholar and author. What a fantastic talk that is. I encourage you to watch that on our YouTube channel, up now, anytime. And that talk is preparatory to our Friday, November 27th, full video presentation of Monteverdi's Orfeo. Today, I am so honored to be joined by our entire directorial team, Paul Odette and Stephen Stubbs, musical directors, Gilbert Blin, opera director, Robert Mealy, orchestra director, and Melinda Sullivan, dance director. The five directors have agreed to join me to talk a little bit about our double bill of Charpentier chamber operas, which will be viewed on Sunday, November 29th at 3 p.m. as part of this amazing, astonishing BEMF Chamber Opera Series marathon entitled Looking Back at Orpheus. I can tell you, I have had so much fun preparing for this marathon. It's been like visiting old friends, and just so proud of the work you guys and gal have done over the years. This particular Charpentier double bill has had so many lives. We first presented this in November of 2011 in Boston, in Jordan Hall. We went on to revive it in June of 2013 at our festival, also in Jordan Hall. We went on to Bremen, Germany, to make a recording of it in July of 2013, shortly after our June festival. And finally, we took this on tour. We went to Victoria, Canada in March of 2014, and then to the Morgan Library and Museum, also in March of 2014. And then, of course, in 2015, the amazing, wonderful news that this double bill won a Grammy Award for Best Opera Recording. Astonishing. I guess I'd like to start, Paul and Steve, with the two of you and ask you to talk a little bit about the BEMF Chamber Opera Series and what makes it so special.
Our idea in 2008 was to be able to explore the wealth of smaller scale operas in addition to our biennial, large, fully staged operas presented in a theater. And there are so many wonderful Baroque chamber operas and other court entertainments that were performed with small forces and usually performed in beautiful rooms in palaces or chateaux or stately homes. That was the case with Monteverdi's Orfeo, performed in a room in the Palazzo Ducale in Mantova, and in the case of our Charpentier double bill, Charpentier's little operas were frequently performed at the Hôtel de Guise, now called the Hôtel Soubise, which was the chateau of Mademoiselle de Guise, who was the sponsor of Charpentier. And the manuscript of these works even lists the singers in her musical household who sang the individual parts. And we thought the beautiful paneled stage at Jordan Hall in New England Conservatory would make a beautiful backdrop, just as these magnificent rooms in palazzi and chateaux did for those audiences of the 17th and 18th centuries.
And I think what Paul said there about what we foresaw when we started the Chamber Opera series is correct. What we thought was that we would be able to then do smaller scale works, maybe some more well-known works than the ones we do on the fully staged biennial festival stage. But I think what we didn't foresee was the fact that the artistic product would then be so specially coordinated because of the fact of the orchestra being on stage, dancers and singers and musicians all together on one stage. It felt in performance more like the atmosphere of the rehearsal room for the big operas, so that we were able to, you know, when you rehearse an opera, you're all integrated together. But then when you perform it, the band is in the pit, the cast is on stage, and it seems to go separate ways, you could say. But in this case, all of us got to stay together just like we were in rehearsal, and it felt like you could feel the spirit of the company on the stage.
Fascinating. Gilbert, talk to us a little bit about these two particular chamber operas and why you, all of you, chose to pair these together.
Well, it's first a reason of closeness of date of composition. Although Charpentier works are secular work are significantly less numerous, the compositions he wrote for the stage are quite diverse. And among his production for the genre of chamber opera, or petit opera as it's known today, the two of them were really remarkable for us. La Couronne de Fleurs, it's a symbolic but fleeting pastoral, has been misunderstood and neglected. So we were happy to really rediscover the interest of this score. And the ambitious yet incomplete La Descente d'Orphée aux Enfers is a work which was likely written by Charpentier with the hope of being performed at the Paris Opera, or at least on a big stage. So 1685 for La Couronne de Fleurs and 1686 or 7 for La Descente d'Orphée aux Enfers. That was really interesting for us to put that for the coherence of the musical writing and style of Charpentier. So having in all the dramatic elements which follow well the style of the French pastoral, La Descente d'Orphée aux Enfers is unfortunately incomplete as a composition. So of course, we needed to associate a piece which would make sense with this missing act. Indeed, this type of pastoral was often composed in 3 acts, but the Charpentier's Orphée score is interrupted at the end of the 2nd act. So although the story of Orpheus is well known, the unfinished manuscript of Charpentier leaves us on an interrogation, or many even. What will happen to Orpheus? How could have Charpentier finished his opera? And more importantly, why didn't he finish it? So to stage La Couronne de Fleurs with La Descente d'Orphée aux Enfers is an attempt also to give a possible answer to these questions.
Thank you, Gilbert. Robert, I wonder if you can tell us a little bit about this composer, Charpentier. What makes him such a compelling figure in French Baroque? And why have we decided to go back to him over and over and over?
A great question. As Paul said, one of the remarkable things about Charpentier is that we actually have this incredible resource in his own musical diary, that is, these autographed manuscripts. He recorded all his works as he went through his career, and frequently, as Paul says, notated who exactly was involved in the production. So it's a wonderful fit for us in that it's we can really feel like these are singers and players that we know, we understand, we can see how they work with Charpentier. The other thing about Charpentier, of course, is that he spent his whole career in the shadow of Jean-Baptiste Lully, which meant that he couldn't actually, until after Lully's death, he couldn't actually put on any large-scale works. Lully had these tremendously draconian laws about have only 6 singers on stage, only a couple of players for anyone who wasn't doing Lully's show. So it really took until Lully dies that after that, Charpentier was able to do one of his a great grand opera, which was his amazing Médée. But before then, he's really making these pocket dramas, which, as Gilbert says, they're incredibly intimate, but they're also incredibly powerful, which I think is very cool. And part of their power comes from the fact that ironically, where Lully was this Italian that comes to France and becomes the epitome of Frenchness, Charpentier is this Frenchman who goes to Italy and discovers the true power of the Italian Baroque style in Rome, studying with Carissimi for 3 years. And when he comes back, he not only brings many manuscripts of Italian music to Paris, but also brings this incredible knowledge and wealth of this particularly rich style. So with Charpentier's scores, you have this amazing, fantastic, magical density of sound. The chordal possibilities are really quite extraordinary. which makes the score, I think, a tremendously intoxicating one. One of the most wonderful things about the Orphée being unfinished is that it leaves us with this vision of Elysium, with this paradise, as the shades sing, "Ramenons avec nous," stay with us, please don't leave, stay with us, which is not at all the message we usually think about Orpheus' story.
Thank you, Robert. Melinda, I wonder if you can talk a little bit about the dance, the role of dance in BEMF's productions and in this Charpentier production in particular.
Well, yes, of course. Hi. The dancers, dancers use their physical energy to fill up the space, to heighten the drama and the musicality. In the Charpentier, we see the dancers used as an accompaniment for singers, for instance, setting up the scene for Fleurs. The two Zephyrs come dancing their winds. They're dancing breezy, setting up a sensual scene for Mireille and framing her, Fleur, and framing her. There's wonderful moments like that set up the singer. But there's also formal dances written into the Charpentier. So we'll see a huge hay or a grand chain that all the singers and dancers performed, encircling the orchestra, which was great fun for us all, or the beautiful sarabande right after the Ramené chorus that Robert just mentioned. What my favorite part of the whole show is that chorus sets up a mood, but then the dancers heighten it with their gorgeous sarabande while Orphée leads Eurydice out of the underworld.
They're just such beautiful, beautiful productions. I can remember like it was yesterday, just the feeling of just happiness watching the work you've all done together. I don't know how you do it in a matter of 14 days of intensive rehearsal and then moving around to so many different venues. I'm curious to know, going back to the point I made earlier, Jordan Hall, Morgan Library and Museum in New York City, the Gilder Lehrman Hall, the McPherson Playhouse in Victoria, all very different stages, very different sizes and very different looking and feeling venues. Gilbert and Melinda, this idea that our orchestra sits in the middle of the action, of the singers and the dancers. How do you approach this when you stage these productions, and especially in venues that are so different?
Well, from the beginning of the Chamber Opera project in 2008, Paul has been stating clearly the importance of producing these small-scale works in an intimate space. And the qualification of small scale refer as much as a musical performing forces as to the actual length of the Baroque opera BEMF has been exploring so far. The word intimate was related to the quality and the nature of the relation between audience and opera, rather than in fact the actual location, because as you point out, Kathy, the show are movable and can be adjusted to many space. So the idea that this production could be presented in unidentified venues, keeping the intimacy was the challenge for us. The opportunity was, of course, as Robert mentioned, also the connection to have obviously the work of the singers and the dancers and the instrumentalist, the musician, really very close. Steve spoke about the feeling of exhilarating feeling of communion in a real soul that we were able to transfer, to the stage. And that is really the opportunity. So my chosen dramaturgical approach was to try to question the old format and establishing a new relation between time, musical and poetic, and space, the real space we have at our disposal, and all the image we can bring in our production by our own self-awareness of them. So we were really trying to produce a dramatic space in a chamber, obviously, with the possibility for the audience to relate very directly to the emotion depicted. and that is a challenge.
Yes. One of my favorite moments in this is the opening, Gilbert, where you created this scene where the flowers are in a circle on the floor around the orchestra. Every chamber opera, we have the orchestra on stage. Sometimes we have the orchestra split a little and we have a little aisleway down the middle. So we try to make it different each time and to make it appropriate. So the Couronne was the idea for the circle. So we closed up that space so we did not go in between the orchestra for this production. And it's so beautiful, and it's a challenge, and every challenge is an opportunity to make something new and beautiful. And this really, when the scene opens with the flowers around, it's a new thing we haven't seen, we haven't done yet. Of course, it's a challenge for the dancers and the dances, like, where do we use the space? How do we use the space? And I just love that kind of a challenge, because we use the space in as many ways as we could.
And I remember when we brought this production to the Morgan Library in New York, which has a very, very small stage, I thought, how are the singers and dancers going to do the staging that Gilbert and Melinda have worked out? And we didn't really have time to rehearse details to completely redo it. And so they said to the singers and dancers, well, just do what you do, but just do it in a smaller way and try to make it work. And I remember watching dancers dancing in place, almost as if they were rehearsing their dance steps in a telephone booth. And yet the gestures were so compelling. It was as if they were doing all of the movement that they had done on the stage of Jordan Hall. It was everything but in miniature, but it was still so effective. I was blown away by that.
It's still full of all of the energy, even if we're in a smaller space for everyone.
Yeah.
Steve or Robert, anything to add to that question about what it's like to be in the middle of the action?
Well, for me, you could not be more ideal to be, just feet away from the singers that were accompanying, or the dancers that were accompanying. It feels like the energies fed back and forth between the instrumentalists and the singers and the dancers in a very positive way. The other thing it makes me think of is the many lives, as you spoke of, Kathy, for this production, going over the years, sometimes in live productions, sometimes in the recording studio, winning the Grammy Award and so on. And why it kept our interest all that time is it goes back to what Robert was speaking about, which is the incredible richness of the score itself. You could say that the ideal that Charpentier laid down in his score is something that drives us all onward. And so these various incarnations, you could say, putting it on the stage, bringing it to the recording studio, taking it on tour to different venues, feels to me like repeated opportunities to attain the ideal that Charpentier laid down. And so, in the studio, for instance, we get to concentrate purely on the music. And in the stage productions, we get to see that music come to physical life. In each case, you get a feeling you may be getting closer to that ideal.
That is so beautiful, Steve. It's really true. I feel for the band as well that the fantastic thing about being in the middle of all this is, and being able to do it again and again, is being able to really learn how to sing with our instruments and how to dance with our instruments, that we can really connect so vividly with both the singers and the dancers in all of this fantastic score.
Steve, you mentioned the Grammy Award, and I just need to ask you, all of you, what that felt like. You don't need to tell me exactly where you were when you heard the news, although I remember vividly where I was. I was in my mother's living room, and I got a telephone call from a member of my staff. But Steve, talk to us a little bit about what that was like to be there in Los Angeles at the award ceremony with Aaron Sheehan, and having known for two and a half months that we had been nominated again. But when that envelope was opened and you heard the Charpentier, what was that like?
It was a stunning moment. I went there. It just turned out that that year I was able to go and Aaron was able to go, and a lot of you were occupied with different things. Sometimes we've all been there, which has been fantastic. But that year, I felt, I must say, that our production was by far the smallest production on the menu of candidates for the Grammy Award. And so just from that point of view alone, I sort of thought, well, we probably won't win, but it's a magnificent thing to be part of, the Grammy Awards, the party, and so on. So I said to Maxine, my wife, that we've got to go and be part of this party. And Aaron and Adam did the same thing. So we went there just for the fun. And then as they were reading the candidates for our category, I thought, you know what? It's possible that we might actually win. And then if so, I'll have to give a speech of some kind. And literally, I had not given that a moment's thought. And so when it happened, when they said the Charpentier won, Aaron and I were walking up the aisle, and I said, "Well, should I start talking?" And he said, "Yes, please. You start talking." And so we had to think of what to say, and it went fine, but it was some fast thinking.
And you only have 30 seconds to run up there on the stage, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You guys were so eloquent and so beautiful. I remember Aaron's wonderful, there was a plea at the end, just that this kind of beauty could inspire all these other people to learn this music, to think about singing, to enjoy this. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Paul and Steve and Gilbert, all of you, maybe talk to us a little bit about the importance of these studio recordings regarding our overall artistic mission.
I've always felt that the recordings were extremely valuable because when we give our performances in Boston, maybe 1,000 or a little more than 1,000 people are able to enjoy them. Or if we go to Victoria or to Rockport or to the Morgan Library, it's still maybe a few more than 2,000 people have the opportunity to experience this. What the recording provides is a platform for us to share with music lovers throughout the world the work that we do. It's a kind of documentation of this is what the Boston Early Music Festival does. And instead of just reaching a few thousand people, we're reaching tens of thousands of people and having reviews published throughout the world, even reviews in South Korea and Japan and Australia and throughout Europe. So it gives us a much broader platform to demonstrate all of the work that we've been doing over the years.
Indeed.
And as I said before, when we're doing the recording, it means that we can pay 100% of our attention just to the musical details, which is wonderful. But I must say that I've always felt over the years that I regretted the fact that what Paul just said about having a larger audience for the recorded version, we could not have that same large audience for the stage performance. To show the full roundness of the art form as we conceive of it, and especially Gilbert and Melinda's beautiful productions. So this opportunity right now to share in this way is a bit of that. We hope it reaches more people than we can reach in a live performance.
Absolutely. And it's interesting to contemplate these videos because even as I've been preparing for this marathon, I've seen these performances of ours. I've seen this footage in an entirely different way. I'm usually sitting in a particular seat in the audience, and so I see a certain perspective from the stage, but having these videos has allowed me to see, on top of the stage, left, right. It's really been a fascinating journey. Is there anything else anyone would like to share before we prepare for the full video presentation on Sunday, November 29th? Anything else about these gems you'd like to share with our audience?
Well, I think one thing which may be important is to emphasize a deep relationship the Boston Early Music Festival has with Charpentier, with the music of Charpentier. We all feel, from a musical point of view, from the operatic point of view, from the dance point of view, that Charpentier has a very personal language, which we understand more and more as it goes. And I would say, indeed, it was fantastic to have the Grammy for this recording, which may have been one of the smallest opera on the list, or shortest opera on the list. But it was satisfying to see that the exceptional quality of the music and the deep humanity of Charpentier's writing and conception was rewarded in this way. This sense of originality, which is brought by Charpentier works, based on an apparent simplicity, produce this feeling of immediacy and intimacy, which is really something that the whole Boston Early Music Festival team feel very close to.
I would like to add one thought, which is the question was raised if we had a particularly favorite moment from the production to raise up. And my feeling was, no, in fact, there's not a particular moment that I think of. I think of the totality. I think of being brought into a world of Charpentier's imagination and just staying with it for the whole time. And I love that feeling of continuity more than any individual moment.
I agree.
Well, the production is made of a myriad of favorite moments, yes. I think, which enrich each other. But if I had to pick one myself, it would be the last image and the last bar, the last musical bar of the show, when the performers close the circle in perfect harmony and concord. Mm-hmm. I think Charpentier was an idealist, and he has been working so hard to give us this all beautiful music. We feel very close to this trait of his personality, and this last moment where music and movement and everything get perfect together. This is really a very special moment, and often I remember the audience was gasping slightly at this moment, knowing that it was the last point of the Charpentier score.
And we were too.
And we were too.
And I just got goosebumps thinking about it again.
I completely agree with Steve that the totality is just so overwhelming in the music of Charpentier. And yet there is a sense that Charpentier was the absolute master of the final chorus. In this production, if you think of the final chorus of Orphée and the final chorus of La Couronne de Fleurs and the final chorus of Actéon and the final chorus of Les Plaisirs de Versailles and the final chorus of Les Arts Florissants, every single one of his final choruses of his not only chamber operas but also the sacred music is an absolute mind-blowing masterpiece.
Mm-hmm.
Well, as always, after spending just a few minutes with any combination of the five of you, I have a deeper understanding of the work we are doing together, and such a rich appreciation for your amazing artistry. Thank you all, Paul, Steve, Gilbert, Robert, Melinda. And I can't wait to see these two beautiful gems again, Sunday, November 29th at 3 p.m. on the BEMF YouTube channel. Thanks to all.
Thank you.
Thanks.